Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. I'm David Lim in Singapore, and I have suffered from foot drop for the last 20 years. Today, this year is the 20th year that I've had foot drop. So my story is that I led the first Singapore expedition to Mount Everest, which was successful in 1998. And after coming back from that expedition, a week after that, I came down with Guillain-Barré syndrome. So that's got nothing to do with the climate itself, but GBS, as some of you may be familiar with, is a rare nerve disorder in which your body's immune system attacks your nerves and destroys your nerves. So in my case, I was on a ventilator for 43 days. Altogether, I spent 6 months in hospital, most of which paralyzed from eyes down. At the worst stage, I could only blink my left eyelid. I couldn't move any other muscles meaningfully. So I came out of the hospital with an AFO because I had severe damage to my peroneal nerve, and that's been permanent. So with GBS, you might get some incremental improvements maybe for 6 to 12 months after you get out of hospital. But after the 12 months or so, well, any further improvement is pretty academic. So that's why I began to learn and educate myself on not only the condition of foot drop, but also what I could do to get back to mountaineering and an active lifestyle. So the advice, the story I'm going to share today may not necessarily apply to you because everybody's case of drop foot could be from different causes. Could be from an accident, could be from some surgery elsewhere in the lower back that's caused foot drop. So every case is unique, and everyone has got other different medical issues. In my case, both my calves don't work. So that compounds it. So for my right leg, it's the worst because below the right knee, if you can imagine it, there's foot drop as well as no calf motion. So there's no push off when I walk, and of course I can't lift my foot as well. So some of you here may have some other medical issues as well that may be complicating your condition of foot drop. So some of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you today and explaining to you how it works may not necessarily work for you. So just bear in mind that I am not a certified orthotist, okay, as I mentioned. All right, so on my table to my right here, I've got about 1 dozen AFOs, which I'm going to go through, right? So I'm going to start off with the one which, not the one I started with when I left the hospital, because I hated it, and I think I binned that about, like some months later, but the one I got custom made for me, the one in the hospital was custom made too, but the one I got custom made for me a few months after leaving the hospital. And some of you may be familiar with this classic, what they call a polypropylene injected molded AFO. The difference between this and a lot of the ones you may have left hospital with is that this one is, yes, it's rigid, but it's also got a hinge. It's got a hinge and what they call a backstop, which means is that your foot can't drop any further down. Oh, now that's pretty good in keeping your foot up in the early stages of foot drop. It straps in quite nicely, and of course, it's custom made to a plaster cast. However, the problem with one of these is that they're hot, they're uncomfortable, the heel cup is uniform. So it doesn't really allow natural ankle inversion and eversion as you walk. And on top of that as well, although this hinge thing actually makes it more comfortable as you take your stride, because it has this heel stop here, when you're going downhill, look what happens. Your heel hits the ground going down a slope, and guess what? Your foot can't plant itself to make a stable descent down, say, a grassy slope or a concrete slope. So these things are what a lot of people leave the hospital with. In fact, even one stage more sophisticated than the completely rigid ones from hospital. But after using this for about 6 months, I hated it. All right. So this is what I call the classic leaf spring AFO. Really, frankly speaking, these days are far better things. If you get one of these, get rid of this as soon as you get it and move on to something else. The next foot brace I moved on to, which was with me for quite a number of years, and it saw me through many expeditions. Now, this is not the exact one I've used on my climbs, but you get to see. And this one was made by a company called USMC, not United States Marine Corps, but just called UMC, and it was called the Sure Step. So as you can see, this is what they call a clamshell AFO. That means it's rear loading. Your foot comes in from the rear. So you put this in your shoe, right? And there's a bit of padded foam here and a small molded arch to support your arch of your foot. You slide your foot in from the back in the shoe there, and then basically your lower leg goes in there, and then you strap it up from the back. Very comfortable. You use it in countless expeditions, and you could look carefully over here. See, the camera can focus in here. You'll see I modified it over here because it normally comes with 2 soft alloy rivets that make the bottom part of the brace rigid when attached to the top part of the brace. Now, the entire thing is actually quite flexy because the polyurethane shell is actually quite soft and comfortable. The problem is that the alloy rivets, after a while, begin to bend. And then you get a lot of slop. You get a lot of play around here, and it doesn't control your foot drop very much. So what I did was I drilled out the rivet, and then I put in like a 1/4-inch stainless steel bolt on both ends. On some older models of mine, I actually put a little bit of epoxy here to smooth out the sharp edges of the stainless steel nut, 1/4-inch nut I put in there, and that made it pretty rigid. So altogether, very light, quite cheap at the time, maybe about $70, $80 US. You can buy this online off the shelf as well. I'm like a US, my foot's like a US 10, 10.5 or Euro 43. And for that, you just wear a medium for something like this. Again, very cheap, very light, and this lasted a long time. The only thing I didn't like about this eventually is that the foam pads on either side, very comfortable foam pads, got flattened and worn down over time. And as they did, you get more play inside your shoe, more play in the brace, and it wasn't really that supportive. I only recommend one of these if you're kind of like on a budget and your entire upper leg and your other leg is in good condition and you're quite strong and you're quite fit. But altogether, very nice brace uses for a few years. And then something happened in 2000. I discovered this thing, which is very common now, called the Allard toe-off. Let me sit back a little bit and show you. Have you seen some of these? This is the Allard toe-off. Fantastic. Technologically, probably the most advanced brace I had at the time. And probably even now, 20 years later, I still consider one of the most advanced AFO foot braces. Now, if you've not seen one of these, there are similar varieties made by Otto Bock and other companies, and I think there have been ongoing legal copyright issues between those companies and Allard. In that time, it was made by the Scandinavian company called Camp, and they were one of my sponsors at the time for some expeditions. Now, here's what made this particular brace really good. The part that needed the most strength, the shaft running from the end of your lower leg, your distal leg, to the foot plate, was made from 100% carbon fiber. But the front part of it, like here where you needed a lot of flexibility near your shin, was made purely out of glass fiber. And the foot section here was made by a combination. You can just see here, there's carbon fiber running down the center. And then after that, there's a layer of Kevlar. And right on the outer part is a layer of glass fiber. So it's truly composite. So as your heel struck the ground, that composite part there slowed down your foot whacking the ground. So it was really great for my, what you call foot slap. If some of you got foot slap, this is fantastic. And then as your foot goes onto the flat part of the stride, the force is taken by the carbon strut. And then as you go into push-off phase, the stored energy as you compress the brace helps push off your foot. So for me, with a non-functioning calf, this is fantastic. When I wore this with my pants over it, and I was walking, a lot of people who saw me earlier could not believe the shift and the change in my walking gait pattern wearing the AFO. Of course, in here, there'll be padding in a properly fitted one. There's no padding here at the moment here. One of the challenges I found with this is that for my active lifestyle, I had a number of sudden failures or breakages, which you can imagine is pretty dangerous when you're on a adventure or a mountain climb. As a result, I just mainly wore this around town on my day-to-day activities. And ultimately, after a few years, I moved on to something else. I think also one of the things that was also practical for me was that I live in Singapore, which is a tropical country. And this is great if you wear a high shin or a knee-high pair of socks. And because of how it's designed, you can only really use this if it's inserted in a pair of shoes. And in Southeast Asia, when it's hot, you often wear sandals. I'm not saying you can't wear this with sandals, but I'm just saying that after a while, I began to use this less and less because I began to have other alternatives like this, which I showed earlier. Nowhere as good biomechanically as this, but I could fit myself in this within 5 seconds. And I could wash the stuff in there. I mean, I could wash the stuff here too, but a lot more work needed. So eventually I stopped using the toe-off, but I still say it's a fantastic, technologically probably the most advanced AFO I wore at the time for at least a decade. Right. And then during the time too, I had some other sponsors from Seattle Systems. And what they did was that they they sponsored me a couple of cool things I use for a number of mountaineering expeditions, and they're available coming in the market too. One is what we call, like, I think the nickname for this is like, is it the Texas boot or something like this? So what this is actually, it's mainly made from leather, but the stiff part here is actually 2 layers of leather that encases a thermoplastic traditional L-shaped AFO. But the cool thing about that, when you wore it, and it's quite a hassle to put your foot in a sock and put it in here and lace it up here, the actual profile of this was fantastic if you needed to slide this into something like a tight-fitting ski boot or a mountaineering boot. And I use this for a number of expeditions. I don't anymore because I have other alternatives, and it takes a long time to set yourself up, really a long time. And then came this thing, which they also provided from Seattle Systems. Now again, Seattle Systems have been bought over, they're no longer in operation, but similar braces exist. So again, you see custom molded off a plaster cast. And what this AFO was really cool was that because it was custom molded, it allowed me to create a ankle foot brace which was very low profile, meaning that it's very slim. You can put it inside a shoe without significant problems. And it came with this cool thing called a tamarack joint. Let me show you the joint. Can you see that? That's a tamarack joint. Let me see whether I can show you what it looks like inside. Here's what it looks like inside. Let me get the angle. There you go. So the tamarack joint is it's a slightly curved, silicone-covered hinge. And as you can see, it allows a springy kind of action. And that lifts the lower section of the brace to support your leg, but at the same time, it allows you to plantar flex a bit. So if you're going downhill a bit, it allows a little bit of that action past the vertical and back up again. So this is really cool. Around the same time, I also had what I call one of the most ingenious braces ever from Japan, called the Dream Brace. Here's the Dream Brace. Oh, I got to show you this. Okay, you can buy this. You can see the website. It's called the Dream Brace. Take a look at this. This is what it looks like in the side profile. So your foot's lying here like this. Your foot lying here, and what it is this. It was made from a thermoplastic. That means if you had a heat gun at home, you can actually shape it yourself. You didn't need orthotics. Although, if you look at mine very closely, there's some burn marks here where I overdid it on time. And what's the amazing thing about the Dream Brace is that if you take a look at this, these are the hinges. They have a magnificent flat axle using 2 or 3 silicone washers that creates the friction. So you take a look at this, right? Watch me tip it up. See that? That lifts your foot up in the foot brace. But when you're going downhill, this is where the magic happens. So your heel is here. Your heel is here. You're going downhill, most stiff AFOs remain stiff. So your heel strikes the ground, and you suddenly rock over like that. But take a look at Dream Brace. Look at that. The amount of flex and return was phenomenal for me. So I climbed a 5,000-meter mountain in Turkey wearing one of this in my mountaineering boot. And it's really cool. The bottom has this slightly tacky, sticky, rubberized silicone pad. And again, the idea was to encourage people to wear it even at home on hard floors. As you can imagine, it was designed for Japan where people do not wear shoes in their homes. In Singapore, we don't wear shoes in our homes as well. Shoes stay outside. So this was a technologically very advanced kind of brace here, and it may work with some people. It's a bit bulky though to wear in shoes, but the flat silicone brake system was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Okay, let me go on. And then in between all those braces, I also discovered, oh, by the way, back to the Seattle Systems brace I showed earlier. That's a Seattle Systems brace. And this one here, I got fabricated by a custom orthotist in Singapore just about a couple of years ago, before I got onto the turbo mat. And again, I had to buy the tamarack hinges. He didn't have any to fit in this customized molded brace. It's not as good as the Seattle Systems, and I haven't actually used it much at all because I got to figure out a way to put some soft padding inside. And probably with what I'm using now with the TurboMat FS3000, I probably won't be wearing this. But I thought I'd get one of these in case my Seattle Systems brace broke. So sadly, it's one of those like things that you buy and then you realize that it's been superseded fairly quickly. Now, for some of you who don't have very significant foot drop, there are these things like this one's from Alimed, A-L-I-M-E-D. It's pretty messy. Can you take a look at that? So it's a soft, padded, spongy thing, like a 3/4 insole. You could fit inside a roomy shoe, but you could also wear it in your bare feet. And the entire thing is what we call a soft brace. So if you take a look at it, that's where it is. So your heel is there where my finger is, your heel's there, and this part wraps around your ankle and your lower shin. And then there are two long straps near your forefoot, and they cross over and they wrap themselves around the back of the brace, like a figure of 8. And that kind of holds your foot up. And I used this for about a couple of months. It was really cool. It was very, very comfortable. There's absolutely no hard parts in this at all. It's great if you've got a very sensitive lower leg, and you can kind of put it into a most like an athletic sneaker, for example, and they don't cost a lot either. These are classic examples of soft braces which may work for some of you. Again, one of the reasons why I don't want to, I mean, just take a look at it. It's just full of Velcro straps, and if you just leave it like scrunched up lying somewhere, when you want to wear it, it's like pulling all the sticky bits of Velcro apart from each other before starting to use it, and I don't have much patience for that. Another thing that's similar I bought a few years ago was from China, from a company called Medwe, M-E-D-W-E. And let me see how it works here. Now, this is kind of cool. Okay, so this is how it works. Again, it's a Velcro base, but it's made from a soft foam neoprene. And again, it's a similar kind of principle. Your foot goes in here, where my fingers are. Your foot goes in there, and the thing wraps around the back, using about 2 or 3 Velcro straps. And then on the sides, you can't see it here, there are 2 stiff but bendable aluminum stiffeners here. And that gives it the structure. So it's not like the first one I showed you, which is completely soft. This one has got 2 metal braces in here. So I used this a few times, but it was hard to get the metal brace to be aligned so that it didn't rub against the bony bits of my ankle, in that sense. I think if I used the same shoe all the time and I got to use it more and more often, it would have worked for me. But like I said, after a while, all that strappy things got to me, and I got very impatient, so I stopped wearing that. Again, things you can buy on AliExpress, off the shelf, you know, 30, 40, 50 bucks. Not a big deal. And then this one, which some of you have been talking about on the Facebook groups. This is a company called Smart Step, not the Sure Step that I showed earlier, right? Sure Step has got, the USMC have gone out of business, but the exact kind of brace which I showed you right at the beginning, they're still being made by a variety of companies. Again, this one here, off the shelf, quite reasonable, 60, 70 bucks maybe. You can get one of these here, and terrific. And then this was the Smart Step that some of you were talking about on the Facebook group. Let me see how this goes here. All right. So this is it. Oops, sorry, let me show. So that's the foot plate. I'm showing the side profile. That's the foot plate. And that's the hinge bit here. Now this is where the magic happens. In the Smart Step, they design it such that at the back of the brace, there are these silicone plugs. They give you 3 types. The clear one, the green one, and the black one. The black ones are the ones which are highest durometer. That means they're the ones which compress the least. The green ones compress the most, and these ones are kind of like in the middle. Here's the reason why. You might want to have different ones depending on your ankle eversion and inversion. So if you've got a weak ankle going in an eversion, you can choose to put a harder durometer on the inside of the brace. And what happens is that when you walk, let me show you the side profile. When you walk, the walking action compresses the silicone plugs. And this is really good if you've got foot slap. Because when your heel strikes the ground and your front of your foot wants to slap the ground in front of you, those things at the back act as a brake. So I used it for about nearly a year. A couple of things I didn't like about it at all was this. The pad. Let me see whether you can see it. Because of the light on it, you can see something different here. That's the rough area that kept rubbing against the back of my calf, my lower calf. And that was very annoying. I used to get some terrible friction blisters on it. And I think one of the reasons why is that when you're using this, just the action of the brace, and this is a design issue. A design issue causes the upper section, this bit here, to basically slide up and down your lower calf. Now, if you're wearing a tall pair of socks, it slides against the socks and it's okay. But if you're like me, you wear shorter socks and you're sweaty in a tropical climate, or you're working out like I did, it rubs against bare skin, and that's where you get like terrible blisters. Also, what I didn't like about this is this. If you're doing activity which makes you need to squat down, like you're doing gym work, squat down, what happens is that the silicone plugs get exposed a little bit. And then when you stand up again, sometimes they don't align back properly. So this back and forth here sometimes can cause the plugs to fall out. And there were at least 3 or 4 occasions when I wondered, why is my brace behaving so strangely? And I looked down, I lost one. And I had to kind of like walk back about 20 yards to see where it dropped on the street or the ground and collect it. Because you can buy replacements quite cheaply, but it's very annoying when you're walking and suddenly you realize that one of your 2 plugs that make your brace function is missing. So I think in the year I used this, I think I lost maybe about 2 or 3 of the plugs. They give you about half a dozen when you buy a kit. So it didn't really matter. But after a while, why I really stopped wearing this was because of the design issue here. And also the plate here that rests against the back of your calf. Now it's slightly padded, but it's not really ergonomic. It's not really curved into the shape of a typical human's calf. It's kind of flat. And I think, again, it's another design issue which maybe they'll resolve. But this seems to work for some people. It's advertised a lot on YouTube, but this is the smart step, and I've stopped using it now. But it may work for some people.